Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am Mr. Rain, and today we'll be talking about Starfield, the new game being developed by Bethesda. The game is set to release later this year as a single-player RPG experience set in a futuristic sci-fi world where you can travel over 1,000 planets. And although that does sound very interesting, I do have some issues or concerns. But before that, let's go ahead and just highlight some good things about the game, that they showed off at least. Which first off being the customizations, being able to customize your character in many different ways, as well as customizing your ship, not just in regards to just giving it a new paint job, but also having like specific parts or different kinds of parts for the same place. So not every ship is going to look exactly the same. Also with the customizations for the color, they are including a color gradient, which is great because you don't really get to see that in many games. I really do like being able to use just about any color possible rather than just being stuck to a preset 3 or 4 or only 1 for one kind of ship. Another thing that I did like is that with the wildlife, the fauna that you're going to run into, they're not all going to be aggressive towards you the moment they see you. And I do like that. I do like the idea of just being able to walk around and see things move around without having to interact with them. Sometimes that is a good change of pace. Moving onwards from that, the game right now only has featured 2 factions, one being pirates, the other being like an actual like Starfleet, Star Command kind of deal. And I hope that there are more factions outside of that because only having 2 in a Bethesda game feels very weak to me. Especially when you look back at Fallout 4 when there were several different factions and several different endings that you could get out of it. Hopefully they can include that here. And so with that, let's go ahead and talk about what I feel is the downside of the game, which is that right now it is only being featured as a single-player game. And with there being so much kind of content and they're saying that there's 1,000 planets, it's going to feel a little empty to me to only be able to do that on its own, rather than actually bring people in and play the game as a co-op experience. This is something that we've been asking for forever from Bethesda games, even as late as Fallout 4. And a funny thing is that in Fallout 4, there was some kind of development code that you can find in the game that would allow for co-op. However, it was never fully completed, as it seems like it was going to be more of a hassle for the developers to try and make work, rather than just actually have it in the game. Bethesda has tried a multiplayer experience before with Fallout 76, but Fallout 76 was not designed to be played on its own, to be played alone, and because of that, it did suffer. It did not have a cohesive kind of storytelling that it wanted to tell. It was going to be more of a playground, almost like a sandbox, and you just had to grind and grind and grind for whatever you wanted. And because of the way that Fallout 76 is designed, it's not going to work because it was designed to be extremely multiplayer. We didn't want that. We didn't really care for that. What you wanted is a co-op experience in a Fallout game. One thing is having a game that's multiplayer focused that is under a Fallout 76 setting, and another thing is having a Fallout game that is single player that has the multiplayer option. There is a very big difference with that, and I really do hope that Bethesda can bridge that gap and allow there for it to be co-op experiences in their large open world single player games. Their games are not designed to be run as co-op, and I can understand that, but I do feel they could find a way to make that work. At this point, I feel like they have to in order to stay somewhat relevant or to bring new players such as myself in. I've never really been able to play any of the Fallout games, any Bethesda game really, because of these issues, and I was never going to touch 76 until after launch, which once we saw what happened after launch, I wasn't going to touch it after that either. One thing that's always been an issue with me are these open world RPG games that have 80 plus hours allowed in them. They just don't really interest me because mainly a lot of them are of the same setting. You know, games like Skyrim, Dragon Age, The Witcher, all of them are in a medieval type of setting with swords and shields and bows and arrows. And I'm just not interested in that kind of gameplay. I'm not interested in that kind of world. And I would like to see some kind of futuristic, almost anime kind of world where it is a mix of both, sword and shields and guns and, muskets, anything like that. Just something where it's not just the traditional Dungeons and Dragon kind of game. And that's why I don't get interested into them, because that's all it feels like. It's not a story that I care about. It's not necessarily the genre itself, but just the story. And then if we talk about open world RPG games that are not set in medieval times, we have Cyberpunk's 2077. and we know how that's going. So I do feel kind of left out of this kind of genre because the settings just don't mesh for me. And I'm talking about like actual large open world games that have a very specific kind of storytelling that they want to tell. You know, an open world Bethesda game, an open world but CD Projekt Red game, like a good open world CD Projekt Red game. I should have to specify that now, since they messed up with Cyberpunk 2077. You know, the closest thing I can think of outside of like the Watch Dogs games that I had played is going to be more of like the Borderlands games. Borderlands 2, for example, I played the crap out of it. Especially once I was able to find people that was able to play the story with, and I beat the story twice because it was a lot of fun. There's a lot of replayability in that game, and that does come from its multiplayer co-op experience. Now we look back at Starfield, it's going to be single player, it's going to be set in futuristic times, so in that regard, with the futuristic setting, it does have my interest. I do want to play the game, but it's not going to be a game that I'm going to really dive hours into if I can only do it alone. It's really going to be a game where I put 2 or 3 hours in at a time, and then I'll get bored of it because I'm either not making progress, the storytelling is going to be slow, and the action is going to be a little bit flat for me. Anything like that. Whatever's going to happen, I'm just not going to have the interaction I need to keep myself focused and allow me to enjoy the game. And that would be a lot easier if I could do it as a co-op experience and be able to branch off with someone and be able to bounce off ideas, bounce off missions, and figure out what else we can do. And like kind of like Minecraft in a way, where you can just set your time to just build your ship and find the resources necessary to increase and improve your ship. You can set time to just fight pirates, and just go on to a different mission, rather than just having to do the side quest, do this main quest, do the side quest, do the main quest, do the side quest, do the main quest. I want a little more than that. I don't mind doing those quests, and I don't mind going out of my way to gather supplies, but it does feel at some point where I'm just going to be like a gopher. I'm just going to be going to one spot, grabbing one thing, going to another spot, grabbing another thing. That kind of gameplay loop does not satisfy me. It does not keep me interested. I'm far more interested in any multiplayer experiences. And it's not that I don't like single player games, but I do like games that are single player that have a direct focus rather than games that require you to go out of your way in order to move on with your game or in order to experience 90% of the game. Say, for example, one of my favorite games being Max Payne, you experience every single weapon the game has to offer. You don't have to unlock it, you just have to run into it, and eventually you will. Certain parts of that game require you to use a sniper if you don't want to make your life miserable. Other parts of the game is going to require you to use your rocket launcher if you don't want to make your life miserable. And in actuality, the final mission of the game requires you to use the rocket launcher, or grenade launcher I should say. But it's just those type of experiences where, the game is designed in a way where it allows you to experience everything it has to offer as part of its story, rather than just the story being the launching pad into late game. God of War did a really good job of this, allowing you to experience just about everything before you went out of your way to grab anything else you wanted. And the other thing is that the God of War game and its story, the story missions themselves, they aren't so difficult where it feels like you do have to level up your character. There are points where you do level the character up, but it happens natively, it happens naturally as part of the progression of the game and of the story. But it's just something that I think of, that in an open world game like this, there's so many things out there that you're just not going to have access to, that you're not going to find unless you go out of your way for them. And that's just my problem with this open world RPG game. I just can't get into them because of how much time I would have to put in. And I don't like having to pay full price for something that I'm not going to find the majority of its content. I'm not going to get into 90% of its content. So those are my initial thoughts. I do hope that Starfield is going to be a great game. I'm pretty sure it will be. I do hope that they do include a co-op experience at some point in time. It feels like the natural progression for Bethesda since like 2017, 2016, for them to include multiplayer in any future RPG open world experiences that they develop, including the next upcoming Skyrim game. Those are my thoughts. What do you guys think about the new Starfield game? Do you think it's going to be polished? Do you think there's going to be a lot of bugs? What do you feel about its combat? Do you think it's a little basic, or do you think it has just enough there to keep you interested? In any case, until next time, I am Mr. Rain, and I will see you again in the next one.